Today, I'm talking to Brian. Brian was suffering from a serious condition called AFIB. He was experiencing regular AFIB episodes which completely stopped when he started eating carnivore. Brian has also experienced many other health improvements as a result of carnivore, which we discuss in this interview. Just before we get into it, please smash like and also please consider subscribing. This really helps out the channel, and it helps me to be another voice out there talking about the carnivore way of eating. Let's meet Brian. How did you find the carnivore diet?
Okay. Well, I've been on it for a year. As a matter of fact, as of tomorrow, it'll be exactly 1 year. So thank you. Finding it was quite interesting. So first of all, if I go back to 2017, I was really overweight and depressed about, my weight and everything and how I felt. And I was looking for something that would work because I had tried many different diets in the past and none of them really seemed to work. And I found one, and I'm not really going to go into detail because it didn't work out great, but I did lose a lot of weight. It had to do with restricting your calories to like 1,500 calories a day. And it was low fat as well as low carb, which is quite interesting because 1,500 calories a day, low carb, low fat, you're you're hurting your body, right? You're not getting enough nutrients and so forth. But I lost a lot of weight and I also worked out a lot. It just wasn't sustainable, and that's the biggest problem with that diet. So with within like 9 months, I lost quite a bit of weight, like 100 pounds. But I quickly started to gain it back when I couldn't sustain that any longer. And in 2018, I had gained most of that weight back and I developed AFib, atrial fibrillation. And that slowly got worse over the next few years to the point that I would go into an episode probably once or twice a week. And of course, my cardiologist said that there was, obviously try and lose some weight, that'll help, but there's no way to get rid of the AFib other than potentially doing an ablation, which could work, sometimes doesn't work, that kind of stuff. And I was again depressed about, how big I was and so forth. This was early 2022 at this point. And I started looking around and started doing some research about keto because I heard a lot about keto and I knew people that did keto and did well with it. And I found Dr. Ken Berry's videos on YouTube. And I started to do keto a little bit in April of 2022 and continued to research. I found others, Dr. Sean Baker, Professor Bart Kay, people like that were doing carnivore and researched more and more on carnivore. And then in July of 2022, I started carnivore. In the 2.5 months or so of keto, I lost about 10 pounds. But then when I went to carnivore, that's when I really started to lose weight. And now at 1 year, I've lost a total of 75 pounds on carnivore.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Um,
what was the original weight you were at when you started?
so I was 370, 372 or 375, I believe, something to that effect. I can't remember. It was one of those things where I couldn't weigh myself at home because the scale didn't go up high enough. So it was whatever the reading was at the doctor's office, right? But it was over 370 pounds.
That's awesome weight loss in that amount of time. Um,
Mm.
if we could just talk about the AFib for a moment. So that's not something you've always had. That's something you developed.
Yeah. So
Um,
I got that in 2018. And when I first got it, I would go in and out, but not very often. Like the first time was almost a year before I went into it again. And then it was as you went, it was more often. And that's what the cardiologist said would happen too. Like you would start going in more often. Um, and like I said, it was to the point that I was pretty much going in it once or twice a week, and I could replicate it it seemed to have a lot to do with stress on my heart. So if I did like heavy lifting for 5 to 10 minutes, I could get myself to go in it. Obviously, I didn't want to go in it, but I would go into it. And most of the time, I would go back out of it on my own. There was one time I had to go into the hospital and they had to shock my heart back into rhythm. Um,
Wow.
so it pretty much been about a year now, though, really since I started Carnivore, since the last time I had an episode. So Carnivore has at least, if it hasn't cured it, it's made it much better than it was. And I don't work out very often, but when I do work out, I can work out 20, 30 minutes using heavier weight than what I was before, and I don't go in it.
Mm. Wow. So I'm just trying to understand it a little bit better. So can you describe like what's the feeling when something like that happens?
Yeah. So essentially your heart is, it beats normal like this. And then when you have episodes, it'll beat normal and then it'll go really fast. Then it'll beat normal and then it'll go really fast again. So you feel really tired. You feel like your heart's racing. Sometimes you can feel like the pounding in your chest from your heart, that kind of thing. And usually your heart rate and your blood pressure goes really high. So they worry about, stroke and that kind of stuff when you're in an episode.
And wow. So is it like is it similar to like what would be happening if you were about to have a heart attack? Like I've never had one, but I've heard that, you get a sensation down your arm or something like that. Is there anything like that, or is it just more like, you can feel the beating faster and it's like you feel that kind of whoosh of the high blood pressure?
Yeah, I've never had anything like with chest pain or anything like that with it. And it's not like particularly heart disease or anything like that. So to explain a little more, what it is the electronic signals telling your heart to beat, right? And sometimes they get mixed up, and then that's when it does the fast heart rate. Um, so it's an electrical thing rather than like a blockage or any of that kind of thing in your heart, right? And when so there's a procedure that can be done called an ablation where they find spots in your heart that um, have the problem that cause the electrical signals to go haywire, and they can burn those spots so that they don't send the signal anymore. Um, but I also did some research from some cardiologists that talked about that you could fix this a lot. Matter of fact, even Ken Berry talked about this. You could fix a lot of symptoms with AFib just by eating properly because many times it's something to do with sugar. And I can't remember there's a nerve up here that will cause the signals to go haywire. So it makes perfect sense to me because, now that I've cut out sugar and don't eat sugar anymore, I don't have those signals going haywire and going into these episodes like I used to.
This is an awesome advertisement for the carnivore diet,
It
It
is.
really is. Um, okay, so you've lost 75 pounds, you haven't had an AFib episode. What else has changed for you in the time you've been doing carnivore?
Yeah, so I had arthritis in my big toes. That was confirmed through x-rays. And I also used to have joint pain all the time. I talked a little bit about when I worked out in 2017 and I was doing that diet and I worked out a lot. Anytime I worked out, I would have on wrist braces, ankle braces, knee braces because I was always sore and getting hurt and so forth. And even after that, I would just have issues. Like if I walk a decent amount in a day, my ankle would flare up with joint pain. So all of that went away within like the first month. And like the arthritis, to give an example, about probably 6 months before I started keto, I had a really bad flare up in the arthritis on my right foot where my big toe and the top of my foot was swollen and I could barely walk for about 6 weeks before it went away. And anytime I'd bang like my knees or my big toes or my feet somehow, I'd have some kind of huge inflammation type of flare up. And it would usually last at least a week or two. Like I said, after about a month on carnivore, that all went away. And I can pretty much bang my knees or my toes into something and it might hurt for an hour or so, and that's it. I never get those big swelling issues that I had in the past. And it's funny because probably the first couple of times that I bang my toe or something, I'd be like, oh, great, here we go. Tomorrow I'm going to wake up, it's going to be swollen. I'm going to have trouble walking for like 2 weeks or something. And it just didn't happen. I was like, okay, what's going on here? Right. It's like, can eating healthy actually cause that, to get better? It's weird, but that it does.
It's it's weird. It's a weird feeling when you suddenly realize that what's the best way of looking at this? I mean, uh, very directly, it's like you realize you've been poisoning yourself your whole life.
Yeah.
It's like if I just eat what we're meant to eat, then all the problems go away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's amazing.
crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I've
Um,
had a few other
uh,
things that
oh,
has
go ahead.
happened.
Sorry.
So one would be I wouldn't say I had really bad depression, but I had like minor depression and wasn't really happy, didn't like doing things, I'd like to just sit around on the couch and so forth. And that really helped. I would say a month or two into carnivore, that really changed. I started to get more energy and started to want to go out and do things instead of just sitting around. So that was pretty big. And wait, I'm trying to remember now because there was something else I was going to say that was pretty big.
I understand
Uh,
there's so many things that change over time and so gradually that you kind of, yeah, it's easy to forget.
yeah, and it is funny because you you kind of forget what it's like, the pain and so forth, and just a little bit of cheating, just having like a cookie or two or whatever type of carb for like a day or something, and the next day you're like, I really don't feel good. Is this how I used to feel all the time? And it's like, yeah, I guess so, because I'm completely different person now. I'm happy and I do things more than I used to and so forth. So it's just weird. You don't realize it until you do it again. And then you're like, man, yeah, that's how I always felt. That's horrible. Why did I do that?
Yeah. It's when you get those little reminders, it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my, yeah. Um,
Yep.
so if the other if those other things come to you, let's talk about with them when they come to you. But um, you're about 300 pounds now, is that right?
Yeah. So I got
Yeah,
down to 295. I did
295.
in the past week here. I ate a couple of carbs, some things I shouldn't have, cookies and so forth. And I think I've gained a little water weight. So I just put out a video kind of talking about, yeah, I messed up, but you know what? You just got to move forward, keep going back at it. So I'm the type of person that can gain weight very easily. And I went from 295 back up to 300 pounds just from eating bad for like 2 days.
Wow.
But again, it's probably water weight. So I got back strict again. And I think I lost a pound already today. It's funny because I hadn't been keeping track of my weight as much. And then I saw, oh gosh, just from that, I gained like 5 pounds. So now I'm trying to be a little more strict again. So I think within a couple of days, I'll be back down to 295.
Mm, okay. And so what is the goal for you? Like what would be perfect for you?
So that's a good question. Probably I'm thinking around 270, but I'm not. So weight is like we all want to lose weight, right? Realistically, we want to lose the fat and be healthy, but we say we want to lose weight. And when you are overweight and you're doing the things to eat healthy, you do lose weight, right? Um, but I don't know that I have a set amount just because it's really more about losing the body fat that I have, the extra body fat, and getting healthy. Um, so I kind of say 270 or so because that's probably good. Like I'm similarly built to Sean Baker, except he's like completely stronger than me, like a million times stronger than me. But we have a similar body frame. He's 6'5", I'm like 6'4", so I'm really close there. And I have like broad shoulders and kind of big bones. So the body frame is kind of the same, just that I'm not as muscular. And I know he's like around 270, but then again, he's got a lot more muscle. So that's, I guess, probably 260, 270 is probably ideal. But, I'm not really as concerned about that. Is just continuing like the measurements, my waist and belly size have been going down, my thigh size and that kind of stuff, neck size. So I've been concentrating a little more on that kind of stuff.
Nice. So, um, you mentioned like when you were working out before because of the joint pain, you were, having to put um the the supports on and stuff.
Yeah.
So how are you going now? Are you going to the gym regularly now? Are you trying to are you trying to build the muscle?
So I have equipment at my house in my garage. So I don't actually go to the gym, kind of have like the home gym thing going on. I have a son that's 20 years old and he's really into working out. So we have like a heavy bag for boxing. We have a couple different weight benches. We have a pull-up bar and a couple of other things, exercise bike and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff there. And um, I haven't been working out as much as I would like to. Probably in the last couple of months, I've been working out about twice a week. I'd like to get that up to like 3 to 4 times a week or so. But the good thing is, I no longer wear any of those braces because I just don't have any pain. And the other thing I notice is before I was always really sore that evening and the next day, and I might be a little sore after the workout, and that's it. I'm not sore the next day. So you recover a lot quicker on carnivore.
So you mentioned your son. So is he doing this with you, or is he kind of interested in the way you're eating?
So that's a good question. He hadn't been before, and he wasn't really big, but a little bit overweight. But he he has depression pretty bad and a few other things that he's worked through. And more recently, in like the last couple of weeks, I got him to decide to try carnivore and see if that helps. And so far, he's been sticking with it. He's the only other person in the family that's doing it. So, it's interesting, but he's been sticking with it. And he did say that so far he does feel better. Now, he
Uh,
did have a
nice.
little bit of the problem that you could have with going to the bathroom when you first start carnivore. He's had a little bit of that. So, but other than that, he actually feels better and seems to have more energy. So that's been encouraging to see.
Oh, that's great. So, like how many of you are living in the house? So, are you married and do you have other kids?
Yeah, so I'm married and I have 3 kids, and then my mother-in-law is living with us now too. So there are 6 of us, although we're in the summer right now. So um my one oldest daughter will be going back to college soon, and then my son is going off as well. And then my youngest daughter just graduated high school and she's going to go off to college. So most of the people are going to be leaving the house here in the next couple months. But yeah, there's 6 of us, and most of the people in the house do not do carnivore. When I first started doing it, they, they didn't really try and keep me from doing it, but they didn't agree with it. The whole you're going to get heart disease from it, and it's not good, it's not healthy for you. And I'm the type of person, I do a lot of research, and I did a ton of research before I started it. And I explained about different studies that were falsified back 50, 60 years ago, right? And things that they're finding now and so forth. And they're like, well, okay, that kind of makes sense, but still, I don't really trust it. And the funny thing is, as time has gone on with losing the weight, feeling better, and seeing a lot of my lab work, my blood work, they've quieted down about it. I haven't been able to get them to do the diet, but at least, they understand that it seems like I'm getting healthier and not what they thought would happen. So,
Nice. So how do you schedule preparing food and stuff like that, and how are you eating throughout the day? Like, are you doing OMAD, 2MAD, 3 times a day?
yeah. So, when I first started out, I was eating twice a day. Um, and I'm trying to remember, like, when I first started, there was a lot of eggs, steak, ground beef, that kind of thing. Maybe a little bit of chicken and shrimp, that stuff. Bacon as well. I did a lot of bacon early on, and I would eat, a pretty decent sized meal, probably about midday, and then later in the evening, I'd have another meal, maybe not quite as big. Um, I would say about 2 months ago, I kind of switched unintentionally to OMAD. I started making sure that was really strict. I cut out flavored waters or anything, sparkling waters that may have had natural flavors and stuff like that in them, right? And I just went to beef, salt, and water. So it was kind of lion diet there for a while. And when I did that, I found that I wasn't as hungry. It was almost like Dr. Anthony Chaffee says, you're you kind of know by how the meat tastes whether you're full or not, and that's exactly what I was finding. And then I would know when I was hungry again, and usually it was not until 24 hours later. So I kind of went to OMAD at that point. um I got to a point probably within the last couple of weeks or so that I started introducing eggs and chicken and shrimp back in again, just because of like cravings. So I don't know if there was something I just wasn't getting and that's why I craved them. So I'm back to doing that now. And some days I'm still OMAD, and other days I will eat a second smaller meal. But usually the first meal is the bigger meal of the day. And I would say probably 70% of the time it's OMAD at this point.
That's really interesting. Like, how do you feel about that? That you can just go, yeah, today I only needed to eat one meal. Does that give you any feeling of like, I don't know, confidence or like, how do you feel that you can just go, oh, there's nothing in the house to eat. I'm just not going to eat.
It's weird to me because before I started carnivore, I was seeing a lot about people doing OMAD or just eating twice a day. And I was eating 3 or 4 times a day. And I was like, all right, I'll try twice a day, but I don't even know how I'm going to do twice a day. There's no way I can do once a day. And I did twice a day and found that, okay, when I'm not eating carbs and stuff, I don't get hungry as often. And then even after doing carnivore for so long, I still was like, yeah, I got to eat twice a day. I don't know how these people are doing once a day. And like I said, I didn't try to do it. It just kind of happened, right? It, when it's really more than anything is the sparkling waters that I was drinking. A lot of times people just don't realize that there really is stuff in there. Even though it says no sugar, if you start reading the nutrition label, you see that there is other stuff in there that's fake sugar. And, fake sugar basically is the sugar molecule that had a couple of things taken out of it. It's still not good for you. And it still gives you those cravings. And once I took that out, I didn't seem to have the cravings anymore. I could tell for sure when I was really hungry and full. And miraculously, it was like, yeah, I can just eat one meal a day now. And it blew me away because before I was like, there's no way I didn't even think I could do two at first. So it's really something to just eat one meal a day.
There's nothing quite like the feeling that, I'm really busy. I haven't got time to prepare a meal or something. That's all right. I don't need to eat if I don't have time to. I can come back to this later and I can still
Yeah.
feel, you know, satiated, focused, all that kind of thing. It's a really good feeling. Um,
Yeah.
so regarding just taking a step back regarding the depression, um, you said things are better. I'm just wondering, were you on any medication before that you've come off? You've been able to come off, or even related to any other health conditions? Have you been able to give up any medications?
Yeah. So for depression, I was not on any medication. My son is on medication, so he's hoping to get off his medication, but I was not. Um, I have been on medication for AFib, and that is a blood thinner to to keep from clotting and stroke, and um, a beta blocker that lowers your heart rate, and then I also have blood pressure medication. Um, the last time I went to the cardiologist, we talked about the blood thinner and the beta blocker, and I'm going back again in a couple months. And as long as I've lost enough weight, he's going to take me off of those medications. He feels comfortable enough that, I'm not at risk for episodes again and that he would take me off. The blood pressure medication, it's funny. So I had a conversation with intentional carnivore Sharon White, and we both are kind of in the same situation. Our blood pressure is kind of low right now with taking medication, and we both probably need to stop taking it, but we're afraid to, if that makes sense. It's like, it's not too low to where I get headaches or anything. Um, so like I'll see like between 110, 115 or so over like 70. So it's not too low or anything, but it's good. And I've just been like, if I go off it, is it going to go up too much? So I've been hesitant to really go off that medication, but I probably could if that makes sense. So yeah, and I'm trying to think that's the only other medications that I've had. Um, yeah, I mean, occasionally before I would need something for like heartburn or something, and I never have heartburn anymore. So I don't, but that was just like an occasional thing, right? I used to uh, use a lot of pain medicines when I'd have the flare ups. Um, and I'm trying to remember, I guess it was acetaminophen that I would have because with the AFib, they didn't want me taking the other one. So there's, two different. So that's what I used to take to try and help with the swelling. And I don't use that anymore because I don't have those issues.
Nice. And so, um, you said the cardiologist is gonna check next time, and you can probably come off the blood thinner beta blocker one.
Mhm.
Um, does the cardiologist know what you're doing diet wise?
Yeah. So it's interesting because he recommended the Mediterranean diet. And then the last time I went back in, because I've been going in every 6 months, he saw how much weight I lost. And I explained that I didn't exactly do the Mediterranean diet. And I explained what I was doing. And he said, well, we're just going to have to watch your blood work because that could be a problem. But looking at your blood work, it's actually really good. So it doesn't look like it's affecting you. So he like cautioned that that's not necessarily the best diet, he says, but I look good and I've lost weight. Um, so he's fine with it, if that makes sense.
Nice. So, regarding your blood work, like, do you know your recent numbers for like LDL and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I just had blood work taken earlier this month, and LDL was, I want to say it was 85, which is interesting because a few months before that it was 102, which still is really good. So I'm not sure why it went down like that, but yeah, it was 85. HDL was 44. I definitely like to see that higher, but before I started carnivore, it was 38. So it's gone up. Total cholesterol, I believe, was 150 or 153, something to that effect. So it's not very high either. Triglycerides before I started carnivore were 273, and they are now well, they were 118 and then 120. Um, I believe though that the beta blocker that I'm taking is keeping it from being under 100 because that particular medicine um, has a side effect of increasing your triglycerides. So I think they'd probably be under 100 if it wasn't for that medication. But going from 273 down to 118, 120 is great, you know, and that's all just from the carnivore diet. Um, I'm trying to think, like my vitamin D, vitamin C, magnesium, potassium has been good. I have been taking a magnesium and potassium ever since I went on AFib. So I've been taking a pill for that. So I don't worry about my electrolytes and, using any kind of an electrolyte supplement or anything like that because of that. And I use Redmond's real salt. So I get all the sodium that I need. Um, my my thyroid levels have been good. Prostate levels were really good. I believe it was like 0.49 or 0.44, something like that. So all those levels were good. My A1C is 4.7. Um, yeah, I'm trying to remember what other blood work stuff I had, but all of them were all, really good.
Nice. Um, yeah, that the LDL number is really, really good.
Yeah, I
Like,
expected it to really go up and it didn't. And it's interesting because I remember a video I watched probably a year ago from Dr. Camberry. And he said with keto and carnivore, some people stay the same, some people go up, and then some people even go a little lower. And it seems like mine has actually gone a little bit lower. So maybe I'm just one of those weird people that's how it works with me. And I'm definitely not one of the, hypos that go really high on the LDL.
yeah, I kind of just hearing this from you makes me feel like, really cholesterol, it really just is reparative. So it really just is demand driven. What your body needs at the time is what's going to happen, the levels
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be at, because mine's super high. And but you hear like, oh, it's everyone's going to be super high if you're eating a lot of saturated fat. And obviously that's just not the case, right? Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's like your body just produces and transports around what it needs, I
Right.
guess.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you have started a YouTube channel. So is that channel to document your journey, or is that to do more stuff related to carnivore? Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, sure. So I didn't start it until a couple months ago, maybe 2.5 months or so ago. And it is around carnivore. And originally when I first started carnivore, I kind of wish I would have started the channel then and I could document more and have more pictures and stuff because I only have a few pictures. But I didn't because I didn't have confidence in myself. And I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to stick with it because in 2017, I did a diet and I couldn't stick with it. So I didn't start anything. And really, as I was beginning my journey, I was watching some of the channels that were out there, different people like yourself. I think maybe a couple months in, I started to see your channel, and there were a few others out there that I started watching, and I was like, yeah, it's really cool to hear these, and I kind of was thinking over time that I wanted to do something similar so that I could promote carnivore. And when I finally started, it was, I guess it was in April timeframe, maybe beginning of April. The first thing I kind of started to do was just promote other people that were doing carnivore, had channels, right? So I do like little shorts, and I would say like, for for an expert or something, you can look at these three channels or something to that effect, right? And then I started thinking, well, why don't I really start talking about my own journey a little bit? So I started to do that, and I started talking about some of the things that I've healed and just the weight that I've lost and so forth. And it's kind of evolved a little bit. And now I'm also starting to interview some of the other people that are on carnivore and get their experiences and so forth. So that's what I've been doing. Again, it's about 2.5 months that I've been doing the channel so far.
Nice. And what if people want to find you on YouTube, what is the handle or the name of the channel?
So it's Wick Goes Carnivore is kind of the name of it. But the handle, I guess, is at Wickivore. So it's youtube.com/at Wickivore. That was kind of my weird attempt at carnivore, Wickivore type deal. So that's the actual handle, I guess, or whatever. But the actual name that I go by is Wick Goes Carnivore.
As far as carnivore is concerned, is this it for you now? Can you ever see yourself going back to, I don't know, more keto or more kind of, I don't know, Mediterranean or something like that?
Yeah, no, I don't see myself doing that. Um, I am I'm a big Bart K supporter, and basically completely agree with him in things like the Randall cycle, and just that you don't need carbs at all. Perfect example is Rick Rodriguez. He's been doing carnivore for 40 years, and he doesn't eat carbs. So that's a great example that you really do not need carbs. Sean Baker is as strong as he is. He holds a world record in rowing, right? And he doesn't eat carbs. And so that shows that, you don't need it to be a power lifter or anything either. So I really, I don't see myself going back to eating any kind of carb. There's obviously times that temptations get to you and you make mistakes, but overall, I just plan on eating what I feel is the proper human diet, to, just meat and animal fat, and for the most part, drinking water.
Have any friends approached you and kind of said, "Wow, you've lost a lot of weight very, very quickly. What's happened?"
Yeah, so it's interesting because I actually work at home, so I don't get out to the office that much anymore. Ever since, COVID happened, we work from home. But I have gone into the office a couple times, and people will see me and they're like, "Wow, you've lost a lot of weight." And then I usually explain why. Or like if I'm working from home and I'm in meetings, and like sometimes it's around the time that I want to eat or something. So I didn't have enough time to actually eat, but I made the food that I needed, and I'll eat while I'm in the meeting. Um, and there's been times like I've been like, yeah, I can't go on video right now because I'm eating this big steak, and they're like, it's 1 p.m. What are you eating a steak for? So then I'll explain what I'm doing. And it's funny because I expected as soon as I do that, they'd be like, okay, this guy's crazy. But usually they're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, just eating meat and so forth. And I'm like, okay, wow. So there's been, really good reception from people, I think. But again, I don't really go to the office that much, and um, with COVID, I don't see people as much as I used to, just because we kind of lost some of those relationships. And some of the relationships I had before outside of work was for coaching my kids' teams as a youth coach. And they're grown up now, and we don't do that. So I don't see some of those people either. So there's a smaller subset of friends at this point in family. Most of my family doesn't live near me either, but um, so yeah, most of them pretty much know what I'm doing, and they either think it's good or they just don't say anything. And maybe that's just them being polite. I don't know.
Is there anything else you wanted to share about your journey?
I think I probably have a somewhat of a unique experience because I do have a family that I'm living with, and most of the family is not doing carnivore. And I think in most cases, like if you see a couple, usually for the most part, both of them are doing it, or one is, and then after a couple months, the other one, the spouse, starts doing it too as well. And so that isn't the case for me, right? So I think it's kind of unique for me, and it it helps me to realize how tough it can be when you don't have everybody else doing it, right? Especially early on. I would say, like, for people out there that are early on, if the other people in your family are not eating carnivore, when they go to eat, you probably want to leave the room because it's just too much of a temptation early on. Sugar and carbs are just too addicting. And until you get to that point that you're not addicted to it anymore, it just makes it really tough. And I think I'm at the point now that it works well. I don't get the temptation most of the time. I have here recently a couple of times, which was kind of weird, but um, overall, I don't get tempted. And like people will come home, or I'll come home or downstairs because I have an office upstairs where I'm working. And I'll come downstairs and there's like a dozen donuts sitting there. And I'm like, really? And then I'm like, okay, I'm fine. I'm just not going to eat them. But, you know, so there's things like that. And I know for people that early on carnivore, that's a really big struggle. So that's something that I try and talk about a bit on my channel, just because I think that that can help people early in their journeys.
That's really good advice. Just get out of the room for a while when you're
Yeah.
first getting started is really good advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
As I say, Brian, I'll link to your channel and to everyone watching. It's really worth checking out Brian's channel. Please like his videos and subscribe. And I really appreciate you spending time with us. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Dave.
Guys, thanks for watching. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.